their team, they could be a real force to be reckoned with next year, Chelsea. Genuinely, I know like a lot of people want to write them off early doors because they've signed a championship manager. I'm just not. That might happen. I'm not saying they won't flop. I'm not saying it won't go wrong, but just a little gut feeling that this could really go right for them. If they get these types of players.
I'm not going to write him off. And at the same time, I'm not. I was with Chez yesterday on the stream, and he was saying that he thinks they're going to finish top 4. And both of these claims are just ridiculous to me because I was like, first of all, why are we even making predictions in June? Who makes predictions in June? Predictions usually come in August when you actually see the transfers, you see the ins, you see the outs, and you actually make a better assessment of what you see. Like we didn't even see any preseason games. Like at least wait for 1 or 2 preseason games to kind of have an idea of what you could see. Of what you can expect. I think Chelsea they have good enough tools to compete for top 4 next season, 100%. But as I said, we've seen them sign players sometimes, like the likes of Mudryk as an example, where they just signed them based on the buzz. I still, until this day, don't believe they actually scouted him and they really wanted him. I think they just wanted him because they heard that Arsenal want him and they really rate him. They were just going by. They proved us a few times that they were just signing players because they were rated by someone else. And sometimes I don't need you to look at what someone else is doing. You need to look at what you're just doing. You're doing your own homework, which is why I'm just questioning the signing if they actually want him because he's good or because he's just available. That's the thing. Because I saw United try to get Frankie de Jong, couldn't get him, and they got Casemiro because he was made available last minute. That's to me that screams the same signing. That's the issue with me. I want to see that this Chelsea team is actually trying to sign players that's what they need, not what they want. That is the huge difference that I'm talking about right here. You needed a Sesko. Why are you getting an Alvarez? That's the only reason I'm looking at. But as you said, I gotta give Maresca a chance. I'm not gonna judge him because he's a championship manager. I feel like a lot of managers, and I defended him on the top 6 a couple weeks ago. I said a lot of championship managers or managers that had no resume before they took on a top flight job eventually took the job and they did well. So we have to give him the same opportunity to do what others did. He's either going to sink or swim, But as of now, Chelsea have to change something before we can start trusting them because the last 2 years haven't been great. So unless they change it, we gotta raise a lot of questions about their signings.
Man City need to keep him, I think, more than anything, because that's. Was he had like GA of like 30 last season? And just that squad depth is massive. I know like they've been able to sell players like Jesus before and be fine, but if they're going to go and get a 5th league title, you need that strength in depth, someone of that quality, to come in when Haaland's either injured or come off the bench or, you're in all them competitions. So I think they need to do what they can to try and keep hold of him. And if he does leave, put on a huge price tag because, that sort of quality player, they're going to need that depth if they want to go for a 5th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to want to keep him. But City, I mean, I don't know if it's probably not a written down policy, but it's almost like a sort of a gentleman's agreement. When players don't want to remain, they typically let them go, though. And you don't want players in your. What I think is a bigger hindrance is players that want to leave. And a lot of the early reports from Argentina are that he's happy to stay at City, but he's open to leaving. And I always find that's a very coded way of saying he's looking to leave if the right offer comes in. But it's also a way that protects him if he stays. So, well, no, I always wanted to be here. It was just these offers came in. And I think if he's given if PSG, if Chelsea make him really good offers financially, really good bonuses, really good agent fees, but also say, look, this is our project. This is where you're going to fit in it. You're going to be the main man here. That main man element is, and if his head's turned and his head goes and he walks into the office and says to Pep and co, look, I've loved being here, but I really want to go. Their general rule is to say, well, we don't want you here either because your head's been turned elsewhere. So, but I do agree with you. I think he's
what price tag do you think's fair, Terry? I have interest because, I mean, World Cup winner, obviously treble
he's
winner.
He's valued at 90 million euros.
What?
So his valuation is 90 million euros, which is around 76 million pounds. It then depends on how many clubs offer him a contract he likes. Because if he suddenly says, I love the Atty offer. PSG is great. Chelsea, that's amazing. If they can, again, the one thing that could serve City well is helping to create a bidding war, because you're looking at, you've got to be looking at 75 to 80 million minimum for this kid. He's brilliant for me. I think he's a really talented player. It will hurt City losing him, but he's going to cost a pretty penny. And again, interestingly, if this court case don't go the way City want, and maybe it turns out that some of these sponsorship deals they shouldn't be having, devil's advocate, maybe they do need to sell a little bit. Maybe they need to raise some money. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm just throwing that out there. You know, they could be maybe forced into this as an example. But yeah, look, £76 million. That's his current valuation. Chelsea are going to have to pay at least his valuation, and maybe even pay a little bit of prem tax. Maybe a little bit of prem tax on there as well.
He's not worth 90 million.
But we know no player gets sold for what they're worth realistically. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If he's 90 million, just go back to Sesko. Sesko's half the price, and you've been recruiting him. I'm sorry, I'm not paying 90 million.
Do you think Sesko's better than him, Staffy? From what you've seen,
it's not necessarily that he's better. He's just that he brings a different element. Like I would rather have Sesko and Nkunku in my front line that bring different attributes than to have someone who's because Nkunku and Alvarez are more similar than Sesko and Alvarez. So if you already have Nkunku and you need to shoehorn him into the team next year because you're making all these signings anyways, you're trying to get Olise as well. So you're going to put Palmer in the 10, which means Nkunku can only play on the left or the front line. I'd rather have him and Sesko than to have him and Alvarez, especially for that
how
price.
Much is Sesko?
He's like 45 to 50.
Still, it's a bit of a risk though. Like unproven.
Is it a risk when you've been scouting him for years now?
Well, yeah, of course. Like you can scout, you can go. Do you know what? Yeah, okay, yeah. The profile of the player, he's got these attributes, these strengths. Yeah, he scored some goals, but you bring him, into the intensity of the Premier League, into the pressure of one of the top clubs in the league. It's different. We've seen it time and time again. You know what I mean? We've had the Werners and the Havertz for Chelsea and things like that. Sesko could easily be another one of them.
Well, there's a risk that anyone ever flops when they go to a different team. So I get that 100%.
Yeah, but there's different. If you take someone that has been a great commodity, obviously not just great internationally, but great at the highest level in your league for the best team, I think the risk is less. I think in terms of forget the money, but in terms of a player that is going to be good, forget profile, just can do the job, is a good player. I think Alvarez is less of a risk than Sesko. That's what I'm saying.
In terms of being in the Premier League and doing it before, yeah, I hear it by that
and multiple seasons as well. Because how many seasons can you say that Sesko's put performance after performance?
No. I agree with you. I agree with you. And Sesko's younger, anyways. I understand there's an element of risk, but that's why also one of them is half the price. The other one, one of them is half the price. That's what I'm trying to say. And Nkunku's a little bit on the experience side. So you got one that's not experienced and one that's more experienced. I don't know. I'm just looking at it stylistically and profile wise. I would rather get, if I was Chelsea, I would rather get Sesko. I just think he gives him a different element.
Project youth though, or like start to shift away. Like keep some of the young players, but I don't think they need to put young players on top of young players and continue down. I
mean, Alvarez is pretty young too, anyways.
No, but I think he's more experienced at the highest level. You can look at young, like Saka. He's young, but you're not looking at him in the same way as a player that's, 21 years old that's played in, Austrian leagues and German leagues and them leagues. He's played at the highest level for his country, for his club, Champions League, Cup finals, all sorts of stuff. So
let me ask you this: when we talk about experience, what parts of the pitch do they need experience in? Because I think they need an experienced goalkeeper, as an example. I feel like no one should usually ever go for young goalkeepers. That's the one position that you don't want a kid in. So you usually get experienced goalkeepers. That's fine. They just signed Tosin Adarbayo, who's 27, 28, something like that, and he's been playing in the Premier League, so he got Premier League experience. So that's one more position there. Why not go for a young striker? I understand that you would preferably
that's one of their biggest gaps, though. That's one of their biggest.
But maybe they are looking at it the other way, though. They're saying, look, Tosin's got the EPL experience and age. Alvarez is young, but got that experience. And it's almost if they add 3 or 4 players that are from the Premier League that are still, at the peak or coming into their peak, it could help. I think it's an interesting one. I think the Sesko one as well is just who else is involved? Do they feel they can win him? Because if they feel like he's going to go Arsenal, then they have to start looking elsewhere. Another Arsenal story that sort of keeps coming up is Newcastle were adamant they're not going to sell him. But there's also a lot of reports they've got to sell players, they've got PSR issues, etc., etc. Could any of you see Arsenal going back in for Isak, or do you think this is one that is just too far away from Arsenal to get?
I don't know why Arsenal fans want him to be sold on a cheap. Newcastle signed him for 70 million, by the way. I feel like a lot of people don't know that. They paid 70 million for him. So when they asked for 100 plus, margin-wise, that's a decent profit. Because I heard people saying, no, he's only worth 80 to 90. Like, there's no way they bought him, gave him 2 seasons or 1.5 seasons, got all these goals, and they're going to only sell him for 10 to 20 million more. Like, it just logically doesn't make sense. They'd rather keep him than to just sell him for such a small margin. So I think Isak would be an ideal signing for them. They're just going to have to pay a lot for it. And if they're ambitious and they want to win the Premier League next season, he's a very good signing, and it would be a step in the correct way. But I think you're going to have to break the bank for him. I'm not going to lie. You paid 100 mil for Rice. You're going to have to pay something closer to 150. I don't think he's worth 200. I understand Newcastle quoted him at that. Usually sellers quote their stuff at a higher value than it is because they know someone's going to try to haggle them anyways and negotiate. They're not just, and no one is going to just say, oh, 200 mil. Okay, we accept it. It's not FIFA. It doesn't work like that. They'll negotiate. But they'll probably bring it down to 150. But I think that's the price that he will actually go at if they try to get him. And I understand
the PSR thing, I think the deadline for them having to sell players by the 31st, I think it does weaken their hand. And this is what I was speaking to a Newcastle fan about this, because when it comes to selling players, because he's saying, well, we got a lot of players that there's interest in that we want to get rid of. But if you're a club, and you're the buying club, and you know they're under pressure to sell players by the 31st of June, that's their deadline to sell, not your deadline to buy, then you're relaxed. You're sitting there going, look, we want to buy this player, but we ain't paying no 200 mil. We ain't paying no 150 mil.
I agree. And I think that's why there's been very little transfer activity so far, very little, because there's 5 or 6 teams in the Prem that have got these issues. I'm sure there's multiple across Europe that have these issues. And I think there's a lot of people it's always slower in a year where there's international football, because a lot of the players are also away or with the nations already around the world. But I also think that's playing a part in it, because clubs are waiting. Even if you're like a Newcastle, when you want to spend, it's by the 31st of June. So you're not going to spend, you're definitely not going to buy anybody before the 31st of June, because that's going to mean you've got to sell even more. So, and then
people are saying that Sky deleted the tweet, but that was because of the Chelsea thing, right? They retracted, so the other clubs,
so they've retracted the bit about Chelsea needing to sell.
So Newcastle fans, don't get too relaxed. That's the only reason.
Yeah.